Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Partner Spotlight for December. Currently 31 minutes past, as appears to be the age-old tradition. We'll give everybody just a couple more minutes because there are still a few people pulling into the lobby. Anyone that's in now, if you want a couple more minutes just to run, get yourself a coffee or something like that, yourself a drink, and we'll start in a minute's time. Thank you. For the few new people that have just turned up, we're just going to give everybody give or take just another minute or so just to finish up on previous calls, get drinks, etc., and we'll start again shortly. Thank you. Excellent. I think that's enough time to have captured a few more stragglers. So we'll begin. So again, thank you for your time in advance, and welcome to the December Partner Spotlight. My name is Nathan Miller, and I'm the Microsoft Program Manager at Bytes. Today we're going to run through a few things, more sort of Azure focus, which is how it's falling, I guess. We're going to go through the Azure Savings Plan for Compute, quite an interesting new offering that's available. So we're going to go through that in a bit more detail. That's what it is, how we can sort of work together to leverage the benefits and pass those benefits on to your customers. We're going to go through the Azure Marketplace, probably something that you've all heard quite a lot about. It's very high on Microsoft's agenda, and for good reason too. We'll go through that. Go for the Bytes Migration services, funding options that are linked to that, and an update on the legacy to NC incentive. Again, something that you'll probably almost sit to their foot hearing about because it's that high up on everyone's agenda, isn't it? So the first thing that we'll go into is the Azure Savings Plan for Compute. This will probably take up the majority of the webinar. It's a very interesting offering. If you can work out where it sits within your customers and how to leverage it, I think that would be very advantageous, both for your customers and for yourselves, because this is quite new. Anyone that can adopt to a new Microsoft service quicker, puts themselves instantly on the front foot. So what I'd like to do to this, go through where it sits within the Microsoft, what's the optimization stack, I guess how we can leverage it. So first of all, here's quite a nice one-pager on the options that you currently have to optimize customer spend. And when I say optimize customer spend, I'm not talking about technical optimization, and right sizing. We will cover that a little bit later on, but this isn't a technical optimization. This is a commercial optimization. So currently, as we stand, or previous before November, I guess, we had options of reducing or saving our customers for Azure when it comes to what we class as software, as we can see on the screen there. So software is classed as the Azure hybrid use benefit. And what that is that if your customer has software assurance that they've purchased a Windows Server or SQL Server from a different agreement, we can put the Windows Server or the SQL Server into the cloud, into Azure. And because they have software assurance, we have the ability to turn on something called hybrid use benefit. Essentially, you've paid for the service once already, you've paid a little bit extra for the software assurance benefit. We can remove the charging for the Windows Server element of your VM or the SQL Server element of your VM. Not to go into that at sort of too finer detail, you need to have this many core packs to cover this, etc. The high level is if you've got software assurance covering a Windows Server or a SQL Server, we can leverage that benefit to reduce the cost of moving to Azure. If your customer doesn't have software assurance, we can sell the licenses separately. So we can provide you with a Windows Server license or SQL Server license to reduce costs. It's not software assurance, it's the Windows Server subscription license. So there is a slight difference. But if you don't have that, we can still, get our calculators out and work out how much the customer's paying for that infrastructure and that OS, how much they're paying for that versus how much their cost of ownership is of buying that. Because depending on the size, you will tend to find, based on size and usage, that even a smaller customer we can pay up front for Windows Server for 1 or 3 years, and that will reduce the cost quite nicely. So that's the hybrid use benefit. For the infrastructure side of things, there are two ways. You've got reserved instances, which is probably the thing that everybody uses in Azure. When you think of Azure commercial optimization, it probably is RIs, and you've got spot instancing or spot virtual machine instances. The RI, probably, hopefully, all aware of, but essentially it's if you've got that pay-as-you-go machine, you've got that machine that's always on, or you're just paying on a pay-as-you-go rate card, we can do a sort of calculation dependent on the uptime and the amount of hours it's used in the month. Again, it may be financially viable for you to commit to using that machine for 1 or 3 years. The commitment for that machine allows us to offer a better, more consistent rate because we're going off of a pay-as-you-go price as you pay to consume to a more guaranteed price. Be quite careful when I say a guaranteed price. If you pay for the virtual machine or the RI upfront for 1 or 3 years, that is your guaranteed price because you've paid upfront for 1 or 3 years. If you decide to spread the payments monthly, because Microsoft is working things out on the dollar to the pound conversion, there will be a slight variance on the monthly amount because it's how is the dollar performing against the pound. It's quite hard to forecast that, to be completely honest, because we're not currency conversion experts. We can provide you with the currency conversion, but generally it's £1 or £2 per VM, to be honest. That's why I was saying I need to be quite clear when we say the guaranteed pricing. But what we essentially do is we have that virtual machine. If we know that virtual machine is linked to something that's definitely going to be around for 1 or 3 years, and we know that roughly that machine size, RAM, spec, etc., is going to be there or thereabouts the same, and it's on for generally, I would say, depending on the machine, between 300, 400 hours a month plus out of the 750 hours available, then we should be looking at our reserved instances. And with the ability to spread those payments monthly, does get rid of that sort of upfront expenditure of 50 grand or whatever it is. The next one, not to waste too much time on this because I think it's a little bit niche, but we've got spot instances. What a spot instance is it's like basically, I guess you're almost sharing compute with somebody else. So that's not the best way of describing it, but it's a way of getting costs down, yes, but you're sort of sharing the virtual machine with someone else. So obviously you're not sharing the machine, you're not sharing the data, but you're sort of sharing the power and the capacity. So you're also done as a low priority as well. So if you've got a spot instance virtual machine and someone else is using a similar machine and there's a problem with capacity at the data center, they will be prioritized ahead of you if you're using that, because you're using leftover compute from other people. That's probably the best way to describe it. But when that other person wants to use that compute, they will be prioritized ahead of you because they're essentially paying more. So it's a bit risky with that one. Definitely wouldn't use it for production environments at all. It's probably a dev test sort of thing. But the new one that we've got, and what we're going to discuss mainly today, is the Azure Savings Plan for Compute, which, as we can see, is a consistent compute spend. I think that this diagram is probably is probably the best way of describing it. And what I want to say is that it's a little bit more complex to work out than a reserved instance in terms of the what are we paying and what are we saving. So, any customer opportunity that you've got on this, please, contact us and we'll educate you on how to price it, but we will also work with you to actually price it. And and also the recommendations for Azure Savings Plan are in Quantum already. They are in the Azure Advisor. So the APIs and the automation tools that we have and Microsoft have do work these out for you. But yeah, I would sense check them with us because it's a little bit more complicated than an RI when it comes to working it out. The message or the method is exactly the same. You're committing to something and you're getting it cheaper. So similar to RIs, 1 or 3 years, but what you're doing is you're basically committing to an hourly amount. And so as you can see on the screen, we've got representation of 1, 2, and 3 hours. What you're doing, and this is why it's a bit harder to give everybody examples, because everyone will be completely different and different on different months. But what you're doing essentially is you're almost saying, I'm going to use, I'm using sort of, let's say in this example, let's put some figures to it. Hour 1 is like £10 an hour. That would make hour 2, should we say sort of £8 an hour? Hour 3 sort of 15. What we're saying for the Azure Savings Plan for Compute is we're essentially just committing to that £10 an hour. And what we're going to commit to this £10 an hour for 1 or 3 years. Sounds quite good. Sounds quite easy to work out. The caveat that we've got is that it's a little bit rigid. So we're going to commit to this £10 an hour. As you can see in hour 1, that is absolutely fine. In hour 2, as you can see, we only used £8 an hour. That's a problem because we're paying for 10 and we're committed for 10. So essentially, although you've only used £8 in compute, you will be charged 10. It's that's why it's slightly inflexible. And when you've gone over, as you can see in that month there, so you've gone over for hour 3, well, you'll be paying at the pay-as-you-go rates because it's above your commitment. So it's a lot harder to manage, being completely honest. For an RI, if you know it's on for X amount of hours, you know that your break-even point is generally about 400 hours per machine, some easier. With this one, it's a bit harder. I think you have to sort of have the mindset that there will be a few hours that we're not going to exactly spend the 10, in this example, the £10. I think that's the sort of mindset that you sort of have to be on. But you commit to this hourly spend for 1 or for 3 years. If, for example, that was great, a couple of years ago, you committed to this, you're in your 3rd year. If the usage has massively changed, it's gone up from 10 to £20 an hour, you're not going to, pay that additional £10 an hour on pay-as-you-go. You can set up multiple savings plans. So if you're steadily increasing, £10 an hour was a good commitment, a good hourly commitment, but 6 months later, every month you're at 15, you would do another savings plan for the difference, another savings plan to up it, another savings plan of £5 an hour commit, and that will be, taking you up to 15. So I suppose I've turned around and said it's not flexible, but the option of you just sort of bolting on and adding more and more savings plans, that could be seen as quite flexible. So that is quite good. And I suppose another thing that's quite good actually is if you've not set your RIs up in a sort of scale set or scalable fashion, you could go for the shared scope, which is fine. But if you're going for a single scope, you're assigning it to that VM, and that's it. For the savings plan, it's global, so it will cover everything in that Azure environment. You'll cover all of your compute essentially. It'll be spread across everything. So from a sort of management point of view, you've got the whole monthly, commit, am I near that? A bit more work potentially, but you do have the knowledge that if I commit to this, I don't have to worry about subscriptions. I don't have to worry about resource groups or anything. It will cover everything, and it will cover everything first. Before my invoice is done, the usage will be worked out, then the savings plan will be taken off that. So it is, in that respect, it is pretty good. And obviously, it says that you can save on terms, so you can obviously customize lengths, scopes, frequency, and hours, etc. What you may have noticed is the saving is a little bit less. We're advertising an up to saving of 65%. RIs has a higher up to saving. There's a reason for that. I'll cover that in 2 slides time. We've got a very good comparison guide, because a lot of people may be sitting on this call thinking, sounds like an RI, saves me more money, so it saves me less money, might be harder to manage. What's the point? There is definitely a good use case for savings plans for compute, and it's working out the difference between an RI and a savings plan. Another key thing to call out there is no cancellation terms, no cancellation period on this. So with an RI, you have the ability to, especially if you do a monthly payment, for example, you could commit to 3 years but pay monthly. This is quite a popular option. If you need to cancel that RI within a year, and you sign up for a 3-year term, there are ways that you can exchange and go for a bigger machine, but you can cancel that RI as well. Depending on the size, if the order is absolutely massive and you're looking to cancel £1 million RI, there are stipulations from Microsoft that say can't cancel something that big, so we have to help you manage it and cancel it in smaller chunks and look at exchanging, I guess. But generally, you can cancel an RI. The cap is the order can't be more than 50 grand, and the Microsoft do withhold the right to charge a 12% termination fee. So bear that in mind. It's currently not being charged, and we're currently not charging that, and you do have the ability to cancel. With this, you don't. You're sort of us, our customer, a bit like NCE, are all, I guess, locked in. I thought I'd keep this sort of with a reading deck. I've gone through the benefits of what it is and why it's good. Another thing, I guess, and why it's good for partners, turning that sort of negative about it's a 1 or 3 year commitment that you can't cancel, you're passing that commitment on to your customers. So a lot of you, when you're doing managed service contracts, you may have big monthly billing, or you may even have rolling contracts. This service is not a rolling contract. This service is a fixed 1 or 3 year term. So it allows you to lock those customers in for longer on that service, which probably means that if you're doing monthly contracts and everything else, they're probably not going to leave you for that if they're locked in for their Azure savings plan. So it's an interesting thing to weigh up, I suppose. The Azure savings plan, I haven't called this out, but it's on the screen. The Azure savings plan is available for any agreement type. This was the first sort of new Microsoft offering that launched with all agreements available on day 1. So customers got an MCA, they've got pay-as-you-go, web direct, they've got CSP, they've got on here. It's all available by those agreements from day 1. So I thought that was quite a good sort of global launch from Microsoft. So any customer by any purchasing method, you can supply this. So this is that slide that I mentioned before of what is an RI, what is a savings plan for compute. I think we have covered most of this. I guess what I haven't covered actually, regardless of the term of a savings plan for compute, we can do monthly payments. The same as RIs. Is it better to pay up front? We don't really. It's hard to say, isn't it? With the conversion rates fluctuating just as they do. Do you know what a good month is and what a bad month is before you buy it? You can guess, and you can sort of take the gamble on paying up front or paying monthly, and just having in mind that it will fluctuate. So this is quite a good side by side. As we can see, reservations are going to potentially save us more, which is it's worth noting. The reason why it's going to potentially save us more is because the bar to entry, and this is quite a key thing, the bar to entry for the Azure savings plan for compute is significantly lower, and because it's significantly lower, you're going to save less because there's less available to save. And what I mean by that is, dependent on the machine, RIs do become financially viable from, give or take, 50% uptime. Obviously, the higher the uptime, the better the saving, because the RI gets that committed price versus the pay as you go. So the higher the uptime, the bigger the saving. But these Your Savings Plan for Compute, it doesn't quite work that way. You're essentially committing to an amount of compute for a set period of time. But because of that, we're seeing in sort of initial testing, we're seeing that customers can do, savings plans for compute and be financially viable from very low amounts of uptime, because it's just done across global compute. So we've seen some, you're talking 100, 150 hours on an RI. That would not be financially viable to commit to that. You'd be costing yourself money on that commitment, because the amount of RI will be significantly worse than the pay as you go. But on this savings plan for compute, because it's worked out differently and it sits somewhere different to an RI, you can look at smaller, should we say smaller consuming customers, or customers that are more, we'll say more optimized, they've got services, they're only on for a couple of hours a day. They would not be financially viable for an RI, but for the savings plan for compute it would be, because whatever that commitment is, whatever the current usage is, we can work out, okay, commit, and it's this. Yes, you're not going to do probably not going to do a savings plan for compute for 50p an hour, because that's not going to be that's not going to be scalable at all, is it? It's just too small. But the bar to entry on the compute is significantly lower. Because it's significantly lower, you can affect more people, but the savings less. It's just worth noting that. And that, I think, is quite key for everyone's mindset. When you originally look at it, you're thinking, it sounds interesting, but reservations are better. This is the sort of mindset that you want to look at. If you've got a customer that we'll say is technically optimized, they've got policies in place, they've got auto shutdown on their environment, which means that in non-working hours or idle or whatever, probably not a good candidate for a reservation. So from a commercial optimization point of view, you don't have any options. We didn't have any options. The Azure Savings Plan for Compute is now the option to fill that gap. It's basically turning, we'll say compute, that consumption-based billing of compute, it's turning it into, we'll say committed-based billing via the Azure Savings Plan for Compute. On the topic of RIs, not linked to the savings plan as such, I just wanted to remind everybody that as of January, we will, as partners, we will lose the ability to make margin on reservations. Your current reservations, if you had committed to them and purchased them before January, even if you'd purchased them before January but you're paying monthly, you still purchased them before January. You are buying at a 5% discount. Slightly different. Some machines are slightly better, which is interesting. But generally, you receive discount. Essentially, is the word. Going forward, all new purchases from January, your discount is gone. This is exactly the same as the savings plan for compute, but it's worth knowing that when you're doing your costings for your RIs, you'll, in Microsoft's eyes, you'll buy and sell at RRP. So it's worth knowing, if no one's aware of that. Obviously, hopefully you are. We've included it in our partner emails and everything. But as a reminder, you will not receive margin on new orders placed, which is a bit of a shame. You will still receive your rebates though. The message from Microsoft is that RIs should be used as a vehicle for optimization and reducing customer spend. And it's sort of, you're reducing the customer spend, you're doing a good job, but because you're getting the spend down, should you be compensated, I guess, is the message. What I think it enables is not the best news in the world, but what I think it enables is it's, RIs, we just need to make sure that when we're selling RIs, you're potentially doing a sort of optimization as a service. So yes, you may lose some margin on RIs, don't get me wrong. The margin on the RIs definitely is not the vehicle for you to sell them in the first place, because you're making more margin on the compute. So by selling an RI, you're reducing the compute, thus reducing the margin anyway. So RIs should not be at the forefront of a margin making strategy, but it's what the RI enables you to do. it enables you as the reseller to optimize the customer's environment. That sort of work, leveraging our tools like Quantum to find the recommendations and then to screenshot it and to make reports on return on investment and show what you've done, etc. In my opinion, that should be a chargeable service, because you are, or you should make it a chargeable service and offer a few more things into it and do monthly reports, because you're going above and beyond just transacting a license. You're actually managing that customer estate. You're taking that worry and paying away. And what we do, we have agreements with partners. So reach out after this if this is something of interest. We can do a sort of managed optimization as a service, where we can agree a level of optimization, whatever that level is. We would essentially charge a fee for doing it, because we are doing lots of work. But you basically do a sort of risk reward, or I need to get my estate 80% optimized, or whatever it needs to be. We charge you a percentage for doing that, but in that you'll get monthly calls, monthly cadence with us, reports sent out, what we've done, or emails for seeking confirmation to act on this. So that's a service that you should definitely be offering to your customers. You can top and tail what we do with your managed service of 365, for example, and offer that as a full wraparound. Covered what else we see on the screen, but you're still going to earn incentive, but margin will be gone. Again, worth knowing, because you will have, if you sold RIs before this month, you will have customers on RIs that you can put markup on. And again, we can't stop you as well. So if you're going to buy an RI and put margin onto your customer, we have no way of policing it. But yes, you were buying and selling at RRP. I wanted to spend a little bit of time on the Azure Marketplace. This is probably something that you've all heard a lot about. For myself, this is the opportunity for partners for the next, it could be the next 2 or 3 years. Marketplace is something that it's in its infancy. Don't get me wrong, it was available last year. It was available before that, but it was not particularly good. If I'm being completely honest, it was not. Partners are not incentivized to do it. There wasn't really, partners weren't incentivized, customers were not incentivized. There wasn't a compelling driver to actually sell it, really. But now it's been completely revamped, and we're going to see an evolution of the marketplace offering. And if partners, so my advice to partners is investigate this as your opportunity. Have this conversation with your customers, because as your marketplace is not going away, it's only going to get significantly bigger, and the opportunity for partners and for customers, I guess, is huge. So what is the Azure Marketplace? So I've got one slide on this, because I don't want to sort of go through this in immense detail, and the premise is quite simple. I've included a couple of sort of vendor logos on there just to sort of whet everybody's appetite and just to show that it isn't just Microsoft. The Azure Marketplace is essentially a marketplace to buy other vendors, as simple as that. So if you have a Microsoft Azure agreement with your customers, you don't just have to sell Azure, you don't have to sell Microsoft services, you can sell all the vendors on this page and thousands more. I just didn't have the slide would make messy if I attempted to include a lot more, but these are the ones that we're doing work with at this moment in time. So what we can do for customers is the message is we're going to streamline your supply chain. We can reduce the amount of overheads, we can change the order process, we can allow them or yourselves to order from the marketplace. So you may have that laborious process of CSP billing, pretty decent, to be honest. Does it have its mistakes? It does. Is it a little bit complicated? Sometimes, but compared to other vendors, it's really good. You have the order process with other vendors where you might have to pay up front for 1 or 3 years. You might have to go away, you might have to get a quote, you might have to get a PO, you might have to get other things signed off and deal regs and all that process. With the Azure Marketplace, we can enable you to sell these vendors or other vendors. How that would work is we speak to vendors, Veeam, for example. We advise that we want to start procuring services via the Azure Marketplace, and they give us either what's known as a private offer or a blanket offer. For private offer, just think of deal reg. You've got a big customer. The vendor obviously wants to give bigger customers better rates, as they always do. So the private offer is a very specific, bespoke offer for one of your end customers, generally your larger customer or a customer in a different sector, a non-commercial customer. So we get that offer, the deal reg. We also get something that's called a blanket offer. That's exactly as it sounds. We get an offer that we can enable for any customer linked to us. So any of your customers that you're selling CSP through, and that CSP is via us, we can make that offer available in the Azure portal. As simple as that. You can purchase it in the Azure portal. Your customer can purchase it in the Azure portal. We're looking to put these into the Bytes portal as well, so you can pick which purchasing route you want to go for. But we'll be leveraging the Microsoft APIs, and we can put it on your Azure bill. So why that is quite convenient is we can agree, we can go to you and we can say, I'm just going to make something up. Veeam is 15% off or whatever. You'll know what the Veeam price is. You don't have to revalidate pricing with us. Every time you place an order, it's 15% off therapy and it's guaranteed. We get these offers for a certain amount of years, so that price and that discount, etc., is locked in. But we can make it available to you to order in the Azure portal, our portal, or your customers in their Azure portal. So you can completely pass this off to your customer. For example, if you're having the conversation about Veeam or Sophos or Red Hat, you can just say to them, here's the price. You can scope it out for them, but they can just go and order it. So you're making the order process for your customers a lot easier. They won't see the price, or they'll see the list price, the RRP, depending on the vendor and depending on how it's set up, and they'll purchase from that. So that allows you to sell at RRP, which again is quite good because some of these vendors that we see on the page, historically you may have sold them before and you may have had to have gone in with, here's a list price, here's our price sort of thing. We can enable certain vendors to show an RRP or the list price, and the customer goes in, sees it, orders it. That's a sort of commitment from them to you that you're going to charge them that price. For you, we can obviously put that on one invoice, so you can buy this plethora of services and it goes on the one invoice. If you've got your billing integration, billing tools, whatever, it'll show up on the Azure consumption side, flagged up as Veeam, Sophos, Fortinet, Trend, etc. But as I said, for customers, it's quite good because it's streamlining their supply chain. But for you, it is as well. You don't have to get Trend revalidating the price on worry-free every time. Every time you want to place an order, the price will be the price, unless you've got a bigger customer that we could essentially get deal reg for. So that's quite good. Also, the list that I put here, I've put the ones on that where we're working with that we've offered. We have transactable offers on these. For example, Checkpoint, Barracuda, Trend, and Veeam. We have blanket offers. We can enable these for you and for your customers to purchase. As of now, they're sat there ready for you. Obviously more to come on that. But if you have a list of vendors that you work with, send us that list, and we can go and we can check if they're in the marketplace. Not everybody is. This isn't a let's do everyone under one invoice for every vendor in the world. I wish that was the case, but it isn't yet. But there's lots. There's thousands. There's thousands and thousands that are in it already per product. So send us a list of what you've got, what you're selling, and we can look into when the renewals come up. Is the vendor available? Can we automate that process? So yeah, that's the Azure Marketplace. It's a very big. Obviously, Microsoft are going to be pushing this for everyone. So yeah, that should be something that you should look at. And if you have a service that you sell to your customers, if you're an ISV that you've productized something that sits in Azure, or if you do a sort of managed backup service, for example, in your reseller, you can also get in the Azure Marketplace and you can productize your product and make that available. Reach out to us on that. It's not the easiest of things. It's not a couple of ticks and you're in, but we've got a marketplace team and we've got offers in there. Quantum is in there, and our fast track and some of our consultancies is in there as well. So we can help you get in the marketplace if that's an area of interest. Onto the Bytes Migration services. You may already be leveraging these already, but we have an in-house team that can, I suppose, do Matt, I said we've got here, we can cover most types of services. We have a migrations team and a professional services or delivery team. This is the Microsoft Partner Spotlight, so we will be focusing on Microsoft, but there's a different delivery team that can also do the other cloud, shall I say. So we're going down the sort of agnostic route on what we can deliver, but this is the Microsoft Spotlight, so we'll focus on Microsoft. We can cover more services, so regardless of where your customer's service is, if it's in, as I've mentioned, the other cloud, if it's in AWS, if it's in Google, if it's on-prem, we can migrate them across to Azure for you. If it's on a different contract, if it's on a ski contract, which is an older, if we say enterprise agreement that's going end of life, if it's I've got on their pay-as-you-go, so if the customer is buying off the Microsoft, basically the website, and they're doing a credit card, we can migrate them across. That's an area that partners should definitely be looking at. If our customers spinning up Azure consumption, we can flip them across to CSP, and then you can take ownership of that billing. We've got our Azure Experts MSP, accreditation as a group, and the migrations that we do are underpinned by that sort of methodology, and by us having to go through that process. There's about 80 companies globally that have that, so it's sort of the best when it comes to Azure. And it's not just the selling of Azure; it's a wraparound optimization service. It's going through all runs of the migration service and the cloud practice strategy and everything. So it is not just sort of the selling; it's a full encompassing offering. When we do our migrations, we do include the sort of option for modernization. Yes, we can lift and shift, and exactly as it is now, we can move it across into Azure. If it's pay as you go, if it's already with Azure, might be fine to do that because it might be optimized. If we're talking about on-premise, for example, and you don't build Azure in the same way that you build on-premise, you don't need to worry about forecasting usage for 3 years' time and buying that big server to cover that. So we do offer modernization so to make sure that you are entering the cloud in the best possible state. And we've recently launched the health check via our Quantum service. So if it's existing consumption on Azure, just on a different agreement, WebDirect, another reseller, we can gain access to the sort of billing APIs for that. So we can get at what the billing and what the usage. Obviously, no personal data, just Azure usage. We can sort of watch it for a month, and then we could submit back to yourselves. Here's all the options. They're paying 10 grand a month. If you moved it across and RI'd it, it would be 6 grand, 8 grand, etc. So we can do a full health check, which we can then present back. You can present back to the potential customer. You and us can present back to the customer, and we can use that as a tool to keep your margin high. So instead of you going in and just undercutting the incumbents, you can keep your margin at RRP, but we're leveraging technical optimization, we're leveraging commercial optimization, as we've covered. Why I wanted to highlight this is, yes, there's quite a lot of partners that can migrate. Because of our Azure Experts MSP status, we can either get funding for the migrations from Microsoft, or in the case of MCA or pay-as-you-go to CSP, we obviously can't get funding for that because the customer's already with Microsoft. Can't go to Microsoft and ask for funding to nick their customer. But the process that we've got when we run through the the health check and the assessments, as long as they've got services that can move across to CSP, we're happy to guarantee no downtime or loss of service, which is quite a bold claim. We're not doing a 10, 20, 30 day full professional service engagement piece. We're able to essentially do a billing switch. If you don't take us up on the modernization and the health check, we can just flip that subscription billing from Microsoft Direct to you. So no downtime, no loss of service. It's done on a subscription by subscription basis, so it doesn't just happen in a couple of seconds, and we watch it to make sure that it's all going through anyway. And there's people that are manually doing that. But anyone can offer migration services. Our benefit is that as long as they don't have things, they've probably got an EA contract or SKI, when they're getting very specific DevOps or very specific dev test environments that don't exist in CSP, you can't migrate something that doesn't exist. You'd have to modernize it, or they've gone on a different route. If we can do like for like, which is quite common, there's not many things that are not in CSP, but it is generally dev test. It is a billing switch. Because it's a billing switch, no downtime, no loss of service, you can get them flipped across to your billing. So the call to action is, speak to us. We can get propensity data on your customers. We can find out through Microsoft if they have a propensity for Azure, which means they've probably got Azure on pay-as-you-go, or they've got AWS or Google. We get the propensity data, we can target them, and if it's on pay-as-you-go, we don't have to come back and do the whole 10 days, 20 days professional service work at £1,000 a day, £1,500 a day, whatever it is. We can essentially do the billing switch to the customer. The messages, no downtime, no loss of service, we'll take you over, my reseller will bill me. And essentially we may get some monetization after it. We may go through with the health check and pitch that way. But the key thing here is we can cover most services. If we're doing the billing transfers, no downtime, no loss of service. If we're doing on-prem to Azure, then obviously it is professional service work. You can't just flip something from on-prem, can you? Because it's completely different. We can't just flip something from AWS. But we can work with Microsoft and we can gain funding to hopefully cover all of our professional service or cover a massive chunk of it, which means that you may be looking at a 20, 30 grand professional service cost, or you may have been looking at having to take one of your staff away from business as usual to deliver a project that they're going to be 30 days. 30 working days is obviously more than a month. Send that to us. We can do that for you. You just freed up that resource. And if we can't get all of the project covered by funding, if we have to charge you $2 or $3 grand for 30 days work and you get all that as your consumption, it's not a bad conversation to have, really. So that's the migration services. As very briefly alluded to on the previous slide, I just wanted to run through some funding options, some ways that we can work with yourselves and with your customers to essentially gain funding from Microsoft to speed up projects. There's a couple just to highlight. I think the bottom ones of more interest, but first to cover very briefly. Hopefully you've all heard of funded workshops or MCI workshops, and we've recently gone through all of the skilling to upskill ourselves on the Viva workshops as well. But as long as the customer hits certain criteria, we can go through that criteria on a one-to-one basis with yourselves. As long as the customer hits that criteria, we can deliver workshops on behalf of Microsoft to the customer. These are funded, so you don't have to worry about paying us to deliver the service, or you don't have to worry about taking a resource out of your business for 2 days, because they generally are 2 days of work to do this. We'll turn up, we'll go for approved Microsoft content, the approved Microsoft message, on behalf of yourselves. Yes, you're obviously welcome to attend, but we can deliver those workshops. Depending on the workshop, it's either a one-to-one workshop, because it's the customers of the size that they can get funding for that, or it's a one-to-many workshop. Different messages. The one-to-many, obviously, we deliver on your behalf. You drive several end customers to it, and we'll go through a standardized message, upsell from standard to premium, etc. For the, one-to-one, it will be based on, Viva, for example, 2 Viva workshops, us, yourselves, your end customer going through the end goals of what they want to achieve from Viva. We can give them some trial licenses, again, pretty good. You don't have to take the hit on giving them some licenses to test it. We don't have to charge the customer for that. If we get them on the workshop, we can give them a proof of concept licensing after that, which is a very good message. They'll have a workshop that takes up to 2 days. It's not 2 days booked out, but it's an hour here, an hour there with relevant stakeholders. And then we can give them a free trial for, it's up to 3 months now on certain SKUs. It's really powerful to ensure that they're making the most of it, doing all their testing. And then after the 3 months, you then get the chargeable licenses. Of course, you can bring the chargeable licenses earlier than the 3 months, but it should up to 3 months. We can also leverage fast track, not included on here because it's not a fully program, that's essential, I guess. But we can give them the workshop, and we can then give them the fast track program as well. that is where they get a couple of hours with a Bytes specialist to help them adopt it. So if we've given them the trial and they may be struggling, they've got extra questions that the workshop doesn't include, we can give them, I guess, remote guidance. Fast track, we don't turn up to the office, that's a different service. But if they've got best practice questions or help on setting it up, if they qualify for fast track, which they would do because they qualify for the workshop, they then get that as well. So for yourselves, it should be, sign up for the workshop, sign up for fast track from day one, go through the workshop. We give them the proof of concept licensing. We work together as a Bytes and reseller to ensure that the customer is adopting the service within the 90 days. After that, we then go for the chargeable licenses, which is a stickier customer and more service resells. For existing customers, so that the funded workshops and fast track is customers that don't have the service. For existing customers, there's something called a CSAT assessment, which is a security assessment, where we assess the customer's security posture, what have they got, what have they not got, give them a rating, submit it all back, along with the syscontrol guidelines, and we can present a picture back to the customer on what they're doing well, what they're not doing well. Obviously, on what they're not doing well, that then becomes consultancy between you, us, and the end user to get them from a 5 to a 10 in MFA or whatever section it is. So, not spending too much time on that because it is essentially a workshop on security, but assess the customer's posture, give yourselves and them a report back with remediation actions. Mentioned something called, mentioned this on the previous page, but when I said we can claim funding for on-premise to Azure migrations, that's under a program called AMP. There's two versions of it. There's partner-led AMP, which is very new, and there's, I think we're calling it corporate AMP, just AMP. Not quite 100% sure on that, but partner-led AMP, in my opinion, is going to be the big driver for everyone on this call and for all of our partners. With the, we'll say, normal AMP, we have to liaise with a Microsoft account manager connected to that account. We have to submit all the assessments that we do. We have to submit the statement of works and everything. We have to submit how much consumption there's going to be, and they will give us a bespoke funding amount based on the work and based on how much cash they've got, I guess. For partner-led, it's a lot easier. We're going to productize this for partners, but essentially it's going to be done on a small, medium and large size. So if you have a small project, that's Windows Server, a small project, you're looking at sort of 25k per year in dollars. So not a huge amount of increase in Azure consumption. You will get X amount back, 15k in this example. Probably quite good. On the normal AMP, if you got a project that was 25k, the normal AMP is a percentage, and it will be nowhere near 15k. So we'll balance that and the different ways to claim money from yourselves, for yourselves. But for the partner AMP, we'll essentially be productized. We'll go for you. If you've got a Windows Server migration and it's between this and this, you'll get this amount, and that amount is guaranteed as long as it hits those. It's easier for you to know how much funding will be attributed to the project. The funding has to go to the delivery of the work. So yeah, it's not us working together, securing 50k, then pocketing it between us. Definitely not. It's funding that we need to do for the work. And the last one, partner-led AMP is new. Azure Credit Offer is new as well, or new to CSP. This is really good. Any customer that you're working with that's got a project that's going to increase their Azure consumption by a minimum of 14k per year, and we're talking about Microsoft, we are in dollars, so if you convert that back to pounds, that's about £1,000 a month, if that. We can request an addition, we can request a credit associated to that project of 10%. So if you've got a $20,000 project, you'll get $2,000. That is credit that will sit on the Azure subscription for the customer. So if you're doing some deployments, or we're working together and doing some deployments, we can go back to the customer and we can advise that, in the proof of concept stage of this, we've managed to secure some credits, so we're not having to charge the customer for proof of concept, depending on how much it is. So we need to be utilizing that a lot more, because that's a very low cost of entry, 14k. Probably all got projects that are more than that easily. We can request the credits. Yeah, as I said, we can use that to negate the complaint, because that is a complaint sometimes from customers, and say, I don't know how much it's going to cost when it's in Azure. With everything that we've gone through today, we can alleviate the cost of migration because we're going to get funding, or we can potentially alleviate the cost of proof of concept because we're going to take that initial. Don't know what it's going to cost. I don't know why I should pay you. We're not aware of yet to test it, see if it works. With Azure credit offer, as long as it's big enough, we can help to alleviate that. Just a very quick roundup now. We've only got a couple of minutes left, but a reminder to everybody, as covered on previous calls, previous meetings we've probably had with yourselves, previous emails, and from Microsoft, there is the SMB Do More with Less incentive. Do More with Less is a phrase that you're all aware of, because it's all that Microsoft seems to be talking about. But we've seen a very nice update from basically the end of the last day of November. It was announced in the States. But the Do More with Less incentive has changed ever so slightly, and it's become infinitely better for partners. The Do More incentive was originally brought out, or the Do More with Less incentive, sorry, was originally brought out to help you upsell. And the message was, you had a customer on standard, move them to premium, put them in NCE, and because of that upsell, we will allow you to offer the monthly SKU, so the monthly flexibility, at the annual price. So you're basically just recreating legacy CSP, give or take, but in NCE. It was okay. We obviously wanted the incentive to do a lot more, because it didn't help in Microsoft's aims of getting people to NCE, because you had to still be having the upsell conversation. So what's changed? So as of now, from this month, it's just new customers to NCE. So now you don't need to upsell from standard to premium. You can move them from legacy standard to NCE standard. As long as that customer's moving across, or it's new business, doesn't have to be moving, can be used for new business as well. But I see this as quite a good tool for you moving your existing across. You can move across to be new on NCE, new SKUs in NCE, and you will be able to again have the monthly flexibility at the equivalent annual price. You don't have to pay up front for the year. It's the annual committed price, but with monthly flexibility. So you can use that as a driver to move your legacy customers to NCE, because for 6 months, and that's the key, it's going to end in the end of June, start of Microsoft's new financial year, July, you can offer them the flexibility of legacy and the flexibility of the monthly plan, but at the annual price. So you're almost taking away the main complaints about NCE, I guess. So definitely that is 100% something that you need to be talking about, or need to be looking at, because it takes the main thing of NCE away. I think you don't have to go to your customers and commit to that amount to get a cheaper price. You're essentially buying yourselves another 6 months. Why should you do that? Because Microsoft's push is NCE. Your rebates for legacy are gone. Your earning opportunities is obviously going to be going because of that. There's the commitment from Microsoft that all new services, the 3-year terms and all that, will be going on NCE only, or NCE first. So it's just another enabler for you to have those conversations. And then last, just to build out this slide, hopefully you've all seen, it's in our newsletter, but there's a change, there's a global pricing update from Microsoft. It's a little bit hard to really say how this is going to affect the UK, because it's just not been announced yet. But what Microsoft have announced is that for the first time ever, they're going to add in a semi-annual pricing update, review or cadence, which is obviously not great news when we consider that we had a price increase earlier this year that you probably all did the right thing and offered them either a renewal into legacy or NCE for the adoption promo. when those come up for renewal, they will be hit by the price increase from earlier this year. All new customers will be hit by the price increase, as of now, but the potential that we may well see another UK price increase. If you were to ask my opinion, I say it's probably likely we'll see something. What it will look like, we just don't know. But we had the global price increase, as I referenced earlier this year, and still, as you can see on the screen, Microsoft India, Microsoft Korea, and Microsoft Japan have already announced price increases. This is purely because the Microsoft price list starts at a dollar price rate, and then it's converted to local currency. I'm sure if you've worked with enterprise customers, you get the odd enterprise customer that's in the UK but are buying from Microsoft Malta, for example, or Microsoft India because it's got staff in India because it was commercially viable for them to do so. This is, hopefully going to change that a little bit, but yeah, we don't know what's going to happen to the UK. What we do know is the wording from Microsoft is that it's plans that are billed in local currency that are converted, because there's the whole, again, we've covered this, the exchange rates. So that is just them sort of managing the exchange rate, I guess. What hasn't been called out is what's happening in the UK. It's worth noting that NCE is on the price list. It is a dollar price list that is converted to pound set by Microsoft already. Hence why RIs can fluctuate. It'll be very interesting to see what happens to legacy CSP, because legacy CSP is not built that way. Legacy CSP is delivered to us on the UK price list already. It's not a dollar conversion. So it'll be interesting. My theory is that if the UK was to be affected again, I'm sure it will be at some point, if it was to be affected, it may well be a sort of legacy first. I know that's a little bit fluffy, but it could be another message for you to discuss with your customers to help them move across to NCE. Because if they did move across to NCE, you would be price locking them again. You'd be price locking them for an additional year. And there's that uncertainty that it will definitely, what we can say to them is it will definitely guarantee the price as it is today. And if anything happens, they wouldn't be affected by that going forward until it renews again. So that's it, exactly on time. Again, thank you for your time. Looks like I had a lot of people that have stayed on for the full length of the webinar. So that's absolutely great. Thank you for spending some time with me today. This close to Christmas. Any questions? Please feel free to reach out after this webinar. Please reach out to your account manager. And again, thank you for your time. Have a good day.